All right, yeah. So today we're going to be talking about requests for repairs, how to negotiate this. Yeah, basically what to do. Pulling up a file. As we're having a few different people wanting to deal with requests for repairs, but also I've had someone who a couple agents I've worked with at other brokerages that I was doing the loan for them, and like things went south really quickly, and I was not fully understanding why and what went south, and there were things that happened, you know, and like I said, so please interrupt me for anyone who wants to share like their feedback from past deals. My main thing is when from start to finish, when you all are from showing the house, day one, the negotiations start, right? You scheduling the appointment starts the negotiations. What do I mean? There are some agents who are very particular, and I definitely understand where they're coming from, because when you get some listings, you're going to put a lot of time and effort into getting that listing on the MLS, right, David? And when you put it on the MLS, you're going to set up showing instructions, you're going to type out details, and you're going to get hammered with people if it's a popular house. We're going to ask you a million questions that you just spent an hour typing out and putting on the MLS, so it was right there for their information. So you have to keep in mind that when you reach out and you say, hey, when could I show the house? I have a client interested, and it says on there, vacant with a lockbox, go and show. There's a lot of agents that pisses them off. It doesn't necessarily make me mad, but at the same time, it's kind of like, listen, all it took was for you to go on the MLS and look. I get that sometimes you're driving, but come on now. So make sure that you start everything you do. Why is this? What does this have to do with requests for repairs? Because your agents are very prideful. They're very, there are a lot that just, they get in their own head and they will critique everything you do, especially when they've been around for a while. They tend to be the ones, it's always the ones that say, I've been doing this for X amount of years. I'm like, oh God, here we go. And honestly, when you hear that, think in your head, I got to be very careful with what I say and what I do, because they're already looking at your license number if you're brand new and seeing how new you are. But the way you carry yourself and the way you talk can change everything. And I've had agents say, well, I really want to work with you because of, the questions you asked and the offer you wrote and whatever. But also when it comes to requests for repairs, if they pick up that you're brand new because you didn't look on the MLS and ask for instructions on showing it, right? It was just the whole conversation from start to finish. The whole process was tough. They're going to be tougher. And I want them to be in a good mood so that I know that whatever details and information I'm giving them, they're going to relay properly to the seller. So when you set up the appointment, you're going to go on the MLS and you're going to make sure that you're not asking, if it's not crystal clear how you need to set up an appointment, then sure, reach out and ask. But do not just call. I know a lot of agents have some opinions about that because they think, oh, I just want to give a courtesy call. Unless if someone asks for a courtesy call, don't give them the courtesy call because they think it's a waste of time. I'm just being brutally honest. Some will ask for you. They'll say vacant with a lockbox, text agent when you're going to go show it. That way, okay, they want a courtesy text, right? But don't just assume that for them because it can screw things over for your client. Not a ton, just it might. When you're there, obviously be very respectful of the house. If your client wants to go to the bathroom, just make sure that there are no cameras inside the house, right? That, if your client goes to the bathroom, you know what I do before we leave the house? I go in the bathroom to make sure it's still clean. Poor Chanel and Nate, when we sold their house in Folsom, after one of the open houses, it was like someone just made a mess in every bathroom or something. Like it was weird.
They stole my son's shaver and shaved their pubes and left it in our toilet.
Yeah.
Somebody obviously hated us.
Yeah. Someone did. It was really weird. Unless if your son did that before you even knew.
Oh,
I'm just kidding. You blamed it on the open house. But when you're there, yeah, you have to make sure, like, when I go and lock the door, Unfortunately, I had it one time where they installed the lock upside down. And so you would twist it the opposite way to lock it. And when I barely jiggled it and it felt locked to me. The owner came up right behind us. And so we left. She said, "Hey, by the way, the owner wasn't upset or anything, but you did leave the door unlocked, just to warn you." And I was like, "That's weird because I thought I locked it, but I didn't really jiggle it because she pulled up." And she said, just make sure it's really locked, because if you do leave it unlocked, that would piss someone off. Make sure you don't take the key with you. That will also piss them off. And this kind of stuff starts the conversation off in the negotiations from start to finish, right? In your relationship, it's very important. Same thing with your transaction coordinators. I've gone through all of the transaction coordinators that everyone in our brokerage currently works with. If you bring on anyone new, I'll have that conversation with them as well. But I've already told them, hey, listen, there have been recent lawsuits that came out because an agent, and this didn't really happen with the transaction coordinator, but an agent really pissed off the listing agent and pissed off the seller because of something. And the buyer later found out, and that's why their request for repairs went south. Like they basically were not able to negotiate. It got really weird. They asked the seller about it. The seller said your agent was extremely rude, and they went and they sued their agent. And kind of rightfully so, right? We can debate that at another time, but your transaction coordinators. So I had it in a deal where I was doing the loan, and the agent said, I don't know, something went really south. We're not going to get any more credits towards repairs. And, there was an argument about a document, if it needed to be signed or not. And my transaction coordinator kind of made a comment about, this is always done on every basically saying like, hey, do you guys know what you're doing? Like, that it's unnecessary. And this is the conversation I would have at the start with your transaction coordinator. Because remember, they're the person you're hiring. Hey, listen, do not ask for any documents. You can ask one time for a document from them, like let's say seller disclosures or for something to be signed back, but don't ask anymore after or ask me before you ask again. I would definitely tell your transaction coordinator on every transaction that, because they're there to hit the checklist. But there are some agents who don't have a transaction coordinator and they're doing everything themselves. I don't care if they have not sent back a signed document from the seller. I don't give a shit until they have agreed to my request for repairs. We can go through the checklist, and if they missed an initial on one page, okay, he's ringing. It hurts, kind of. Yeah, ringing in my ear. Hello. It's the aliens. But if we're missing a seller initial on a document, I don't really care. You can ask for it. Hey, by the way, we're missing this initial. If you could send it back. But when a transaction coordinator is freaking out, we've asked them 5 times, right? Damaris had one where she said she was going to send back, the seller already agreed to pay the buyer's agent commission in the checkbox, in the offer. So 3G. That populates a form. The seller, it's the seller agreement to pay the commission. They've already acknowledged that they would pay it. Yes, the form is redundant because it just goes over extra details. The agent had emailed Damaris saying, hey, I'm sorry, I forgot to have him sign it in this agreement, but he has already agreed to pay it. I'm just still working on it. And she's, her transaction coordinator, which many of you know, is still pressuring like, hey, she still hasn't sent it. She still hasn't sent it. Listen, if they've acknowledged it, if she's acknowledged that, hey, she forgot to have him sign it, but he's already signed the purchase agreement, then he has already committed to sign it, and that's on his agent for not giving him the disclosure form or not having him sign it. Yes, we need him to sign it. We'll get him to sign it. More importantly, we have a big issue because the buyer was ready to walk away from this deal. Basically they're about to ask for a $30,000 to $40,000 price reduction, which I'll talk to you after Damaris about it. And I need them to agree to that. I don't need my transaction coordinator harassing them for a document that has already been agreed to and that she said she would get to me. I want them to agree to reduce the price 40 grand, right? That's a bigger hurdle that we need to overcome first. So here's my thing too, is as you're going through the process, I tell my clients, listen, the first couple things we have to do right away when they accept our offer is you need to get your earnest money deposit into title and escrow. Yes, you have 3 business days to do that, but you want to do that as fast as possible. It's refundable for many reasons. The main reason is the faster you do it, the more it shows you're serious. And if we're going to be negotiating any repairs, we want to make sure that we're not late on anything else beforehand, right? Because otherwise we're just going to piss them off. Is it really that important? If we're a day late, not really, but it does help us with negotiations with a lot of agents. So that is one of the main things. Is I warn my clients, there are things we can do that are very simple that will help us and put us in a better position when we go to negotiate repairs. Same thing, if a house just came on the market, if there's no offers, not a lot of activity, sure, offer less than the list price, ask for a big credit up front. But if there are no repairs done, it's a good time to maybe, and there are a lot of showings or there are other offers, ask for more than the list price, because everything with negotiations is a give and take. I'm going to give right now because I'm going to take later. And that has been my mentality when I talk to clients is I say, listen, they should have done inspections ahead of time. They have 3 different offers. Let's just offer 10,000 above, but we're going to get a big credit that's going to make up that difference later. So as we go through the process, you get into contract. I'm going to book inspections as quickly as possible. Every inspection report I get, I will send immediately to the listing agent. And I'm going to say, hey, here's the home inspection report. There's a lot. I almost have it copied and pasted. There's a lot going on in this report. I still haven't had a chance to talk with my client about it. I would definitely please review this with the seller. But I'll set up a time to talk with my client about this report. The reason I do that is I want there to be time that it sits in their head and they have time to look at it to see what's wrong. It could be a 200-page document and the seller has no idea any of that's wrong with their house because they ignore things that are wrong with their house. It's typical. If you wait to send that all of the inspection reports along with your request for repairs, you've seriously screwed your client over. It's my strong opinion. People think that, I'm going to send the report with the request for repairs. I think that is the stupidest thing to do. It's because all they're going to see is you asking for a lot of stuff and they have no real context. Sure, they can go to the report, but they haven't had time to let it digest. And most of the time, they're not even going to look at the report because it's 200 pages. They're just going to look at what you called out. I'd rather they look at the report and sit there for a little bit thinking, oh crap, there is a lot wrong with my house. I wonder what they're going to ask for. Then when I come back and say, I want these 6 things, they're going to say, oh, I'm seeing 6 things, not 100, like is on like the 100 pages on this report. Does that make sense to everyone?
That makes sense. But let me ask, when you're taking this approach, do we have to, I don't want to say legitimate because like all used houses have like stuff wrong with them, some wear and tear, but like how diligent do we have to be about like when we come back with those 6 things, not the 200 on the full report, but when we're highlighting, the issues, like, is there any extra thing that we have to do? Like the math on how much it costs to fix a retaining wall?
So yeah, that was going to be my next. When it comes to the items on the report, I really encourage all of you. So when during COVID, I was working a lot of internet leads. And so I was showing a lot of houses all over. Like I was all over Pioneer. If anyone knows where Pioneer, Lava something. Yeah, all the way up. Volcano. Lava. I was in Orville, which, wow, that place is something else. I was everywhere. And here's my thing is I found that when I was up in the mountains, I was seeing these houses, my client loved them. And so I was just going off of what my client loved. I didn't really look at much else other than, my client loved the land. I loved the land too. I loved being in the woods. They loved being in the woods. But we didn't really pay a ton of attention to the house. And what ended up happening was I had like 3 or 4 deals get into contract and have a home inspector just rip that place apart. Like the place is like the biggest safety hazard in the world. And unfortunately, up in the mountains, Uncle Bobby Joe fixed things the way Uncle Bobby Joe wanted to fix things. And the seller does not want to fix it the way that we should be fixing things. And What ended up happening is I found myself canceling on these $200,000 homes that I had to pay a 50% referral fee on, and then drive another 2 hours to Pioneer to show more houses. So I started learning I want to start looking at things in houses that I feel like are going to be a major issue. And part of that is experience. Part of it is, kind of just looking. Like sometimes I feel like I should walk into a house with a bright flashlight, because you're going to see weird things when you hit that wall with the flashlight the home inspector sees, and you're going to be frustrated. I like having an idea roughly of where things are going to be at before we get into contract. So dry rot is a big thing. When I see a lot of wood on the outside of the house, you'll see where the paint has chipped. I say, hey, listen, there's a decent amount of dry rot. A home inspector is going to always call this out. If it's a big beam that looks like there's a lot of wear and tear on it, it could be rotted. And that could be a big, expensive fix. I'll look at sags in the roof. I'll look at too much shininess. If it's a composition roof, I'll look to see, okay, is it really shiny? Because I want to say, hey, listen, that roof looks really questionable. I had one where there were freaking stains in the garage, and the roof, it was a finished garage, and there's like this, they put this engineering tape over like in between the drywall, and it was falling down because the roof was leaking so bad in that area. And I didn't pay attention to it when we saw the house. And I should have said, hey, that looks like there's a leak in the roof. And the roof cost was $30,000 from every vendor. And it was a huge hurdle we had to overcome. And we finally overcame it, but it was very frustrating. And so I really encourage you, look out for major issues. My clients have always loved me when I could find something that was an issue and I pointed it out, because it made it seem like I'm not there to always sell the house. Like in our initial meeting, I'll say, hey, look, this looks like the windows, the seals are wearing off, and it's a single pane window. Just so you know, I mean, it's going to cost like $10,000 to replace these windows. It'll be very cost efficient, but I just want to warn you that. Are you okay with that? And people will say yes or no, but they at least appreciate you looking out for them. So that's what I would look for. Now, when you and because I don't want to get into contract on a crappy house that we're going to have to cancel because there's way too much wrong with it. All right. So that's the main thing. Now, when you get the request for repairs, to David's point, it becomes a little tricky. We are not there to quote anything, because let's say someone gets a quote from someone and it's higher than what you originally had estimated. What I sometimes like to do is I just say, hey, how concerned are you about this? But don't assume the concern for your client. So I've had clients that they were not that, like, I sat in the home inspection on this one up in Pollock Pines recently, and the home inspector was just ripping it apart. And I thought my clients were going to cancel. And when he left, they're like, man, that guy was Mr. Panic. I'm like, what? They go, half that stuff isn't even that big of a deal. We can fix all of that. We're from up here. I'm like, oh, okay. But I've seen it too often where agents almost embrace the concern for their clients, and they make a bigger deal out of it than it needs to be. If your client's not super concerned, then you don't need to be concerned. You don't want to downplay anything, because you're going to get in serious trouble. So I don't want, the home inspector to leave me to say, hey, it's easy to replace that toilet. Well, maybe that toilet was leaking literal crap in the walls. You don't know that. So there's some things that you want to make sure you just say, hey, listen, I mean, I would lean on the inspector, do further inspections or not. It's up to you, what you want to do. Some things are like, well, I'm kind of concerned. I just want to get a ballpark idea of how much it'll cost. And I'll say, well, I can always Google it. I can always ask a local handyman. I would say, talk to some people just so we can get a quote. We can either ask them to fix it or ask for a credit, but which one would you want? Some people will say, well, I want a credit because I want to fix things the right way, and I don't want them to be cheap about it, because rightfully so, you can't really control how they fix it. You can say, you don't want to say in a professional manner, unless if you're okay with it not being a licensed contractor. Be very careful that if you're going to ask for something, I would ask for a licensed individual if your client wants a licensed individual. So if it's something simple like the sink in the kitchen is leaking, don't say a licensed plumber to fix the leak in the sink, right? Just say someone to fix the leak on the sink. If it's like a faucet, right? It's an easy fix. If it's a major leak in a pipe, sure, you're cutting pipes and replacing them. Yeah, I want a licensed plumber to go and fix that, right? If it's putting a drip pan under a water heater, I'm going to say, listen, I'll always ask my client, I don't think you should ask for a licensed plumber to do this, but you can if you want. Electrical work, same thing. If it's replacing an outlet, why does it have to be a licensed electrician? But that's up to your client. So it's a weird game, David, that yes, sometimes you kind of have to be the person to show them a little bit of estimates. Some people are okay with just getting some type of a credit to help cover some of it.
So yeah, on that, like, when the customer wants a credit because they want it fixed the correct way, and say there's 5 or 6 items, would you guys just like look at it as a whole and say, you know what, that's about $10,000? Or is there an approach to figure out exactly each one and calculate it that way?
My answer to that is it depends on your client. Some are super analytical and they want like a listed item. What I end up doing is it depends with the agent. And I like to spell it out either in an email, or if I feel like the agent's not really good at communicating, then I'll put it in a request for repairs. This item is roughly this, because I'm forcing the agent to go and show their client. This item that's identified in home inspection report line item this has an estimated cost to fix of this. And then I'll do that from line by line, and then I'll just put total credit to be whatever. I like to tell agents, well, hey, we're asking for, and I tell my clients this, let's say we've determined my client is okay, and I tell them, where's your walkaway point? If you're telling me like, I want 8,000, I'm okay with 6. That I'd be a little frustrated, but I'd be okay with 6. Under 6, I'm walking away. Like, that's just ridiculous. I'm going to say, okay, 8,000, we're asking for 10, because I'm going to anticipate that they're probably going to counter me. You can kind of feel that out, as you're going through the transaction, with how people are. There's some agents that unfortunately, or to you, fortunately, they kind of give away that they're not the best negotiator. Some are just, they're going to negotiate. So I'll ask for 10. If it's ones where they said, hey, we're going to give you, we're going to accept your offer less than the list price, but you have to agree to as is pending anything major, and something major comes up. Okay, then I'm not asking for too much because we've already kind of pushed the limit, if that makes sense. So yeah, sometimes I feel like I have to go line by line. I do make sure that I identify when we're asking for a credit, what are the specific reasons. So I'll put it in an email or put it in a document so that it forces them to show it. I've had listings where they just say, hey, we're asking for a $10,000 credit. I just get an email with an indent and a request for repairs for a $10,000 credit. I'm like, why? What is on here? And I'll look over the home inspection report. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I'll expand on that too. I think part of your question too, if you look at the pest inspection, usually there's a monetary value on what the repairs will be. On the home inspection, there isn't. So you almost have to have your client reach out to, let's say, a plumber or somebody else to try to distinguish what it's going to cost to fix whatever it is. And with those options, or with those items and understanding, your buyer has an option to do 3 things. They could ask for a credit, they could ask for repairs, they do the repairs, or they can ask for a mixture of those 3 things combined, and then put that in your request for repairs.
Okay. So home inspectors will say, based on they're not actually licensed, but they join different groups. They say they're not allowed to give quotes. Pest inspection, yes, because they're quoting repairing the work. Roof inspectors, same thing. Like if your buyer is buying a house with a pool, do not use Finley or North American to do the pool inspection. I would call, like a lot of us have good pool inspectors, I would pay the little bit extra for actual pool inspector, because they can give real quotes. And what I want is that quote. Like, yeah, I don't want to have to call these people to get quotes. And so I like having a pest inspection company give me a huge quote. And I tell my client when we're seeing the house, look, it looks like there's a decent amount of dry rot. My guess is you're looking at a few $1,000s. There's like almost, if I can see a little bit, there's probably going to be $5,000 worth. That does not mean that you have to do that right away. That does not mean that it really will cost that. It could be less if you find a handyman versus a pest inspection company, or pest control company. So what I'd say is, I tell my clients ahead of time, my buyers, I want to see a higher number on the roof. I want to see a higher number on the pest inspection, on the pool inspection, because we're going to ask for a lot of that, and it's gonna help justify why we're asking for that big of an amount. But then I want to go and but you getting that credit back will allow you to then have time to shop around for someone cheaper. Yes, Damari.
Yeah, I'm finding myself in this situation because, for example, I had a lot of questions while you were having everything. For example, I had a client who I showed them uh, nice mobile homes, renovated, almost a day, like 5,000 difference with other mobile homes that she wanted to see. We went to this mobile home that she wanted to see because it had a patio. She decided she wanted this mobile home just because it had a patio. And so, what do you do when you get like, I look at the place, like you said, you don't want to talk to them out of it like that much. You're not an expert, but I went like the home is pretty much destroyed. Like the mobile home, it looked like shit, right? And so I was like, look at this, look at this, look at that. And they're like, no, I want it because of the patio. So what should I do over there? Like if I know it's gonna be a problem later on, is this a contract that I wanna get in, even though I know it's going to have a lot of problems later on?
You warn them, and that way they're not. When it's a problem later on, it's when it didn't even look like a problem. That's when there's really an issue. When you warn them like you did, it's easier for them to swallow when it comes up on the inspection report. It's when I'm out in the mountains and we're like sitting there, we're sipping a drink, we're on the patio looking at all the trees and the house is falling apart behind us, but neither one of us really noticed or even paid attention, because then it becomes such a big shock, right, to your client. So that's why you did exactly what you're supposed to do. You warn the client, and then if they still want to make the decision, that's totally fine. You at least warned them. And then when all that stuff comes up on the report, you say, see, remember we talked about it. You still wanted the house with the patio. Obviously, you still have a right to either cancel or ask for a price reduction. Sometimes I like to say, hey, how about, with all this stuff that's an issue, like let's say to your point, okay, we saw 3 houses, 2 of them are renovated, 1 wasn't, but it had a patio and you like that more, but they're the same price. Well, if it costs $30,000 to replace everything, why don't we offer $30,000 less if they have cash, right? Because in her situation, they have a lot of cash. So I probably would have planned on, and that's what I like to do. If it's in a crazy hot market, you can't do this, unfortunately, but I like to adjust my offer to reflect the repairs that probably are going to need to happen, just because I don't know if a seller is going to be willing to give a credit or
give the credit. Yes.
Or whatever. Yeah.
For example, I did exactly what you're saying. The inspections came. They didn't want me to do full inspection. They did home and pet. And of course, they came in wrong, but they haven't do roof, right? So they come in really bad, and I told them, look, this is what the results. If you want to cancel, we can move on. No, they still want the home, right?
Yeah.
And so in the inspections, it said over there, like the electrical is bad. You should hire a professional to check all of these. Also, like they were checking under the mobile home, and it said that they cannot reach down there because it's not for safety reasons. They also hire a contractor to get under there. So all these different people now you have to hire to give you an estimate of for the repair. But my client doesn't want to invest anymore on hiring more people. Then what do I do?
Nothing. You've disclosed. People make their own decisions. One of the main things I will always remember in my coursework for getting our real estate license is you have a right to get into a bad deal. That's why I hear about some lawsuits that come up and they're like, oh, this person was cheating this person. Everyone has a right to get into a bad deal. It is your legal right. They were disclosed what they were disclosed. At some point, and a lot of the agents in our brokerage, I feel like it's a good problem, but it's also a bad problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
We embrace a little too much of what we would want or not want, and we need to stop. your client has made the decision, not like you were always doing this, Tamari. This is many people. What does your client want? They want the house with the patio, even though it's falling apart. Well, they've been disclosed all the issues. They've been told to do further inspections. They chose not to. You advise them. You move on. You say, what do you want to do? You want to ask for a price reduction? What do you want? They say, I want to. What do you think? You know what I think. I mean, this house is pretty tough, but I would just make sure that so like the conversation you and I had is, hey, listen, it's hard to estimate what the repairs are. So you need to think in your mind, buyers, how much are you willing to put into this house? And ask for that price reduction because you have a lot of cash, ask for that. But you have to have that walk away point that if they say no to a $30,000 price reduction, are you going to still want the house? And just, we have to be prepared for that. And that's what I like to say to people, because I'll say, we'll still ask for that $30,000 price reduction, but I'm just preparing you to say no. Now, sometimes you don't want to reach too much. And I'll tell clients that, like, okay, that same scenario that I said earlier, we're okay. We settle for 6. We want to ask for 8. And I'll say, well, how about we ask for 10? They say, well, why don't we ask for 12? It's just like some amounts you start to push a little too much. Like if I get quotes for $12,000 worth of work. So for instance, I sold this $1 million home. There were some issues with the pool. There were wood burrowing beetles. There were a lot of stuff. And literally we added it all up and it was like 25,000, or I think it was 28,000. We asked for a $25,000 credit and we asked them to fix 2 things and they ended up saying yes to it. So we would have settled at 20,000 and them not fixing the other 2 things. So, but sometimes it's that yin and that yang, and you get someone who says, hey, no, we'll only do this. And that's why it's good to have the walk away point. Is it's like, yes, you may have spent this much money on the appraisal, this much money on inspections. And sometimes you have to say, do you want to lose the house over $1,000 because you're gonna have to spend another 1,000 on the next house? But if it's 10,000 a cost to fix this stuff, then that makes sense to walk away. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone.
Yeah, I just have one more question. I was calling you this morning because I sent the request for the repairs to the agent for the price that my client thought was correct for them, reducing 35K down. And so this agent is asking me, why are you reducing the price so much? So I just wanted to make sure I was
You
saying
send
the
her the
right
inspection
thing.
reports?
Yes.
Yep, just say, look at the reports. It's to reflect all of the issues. In that situation, what I would say is, honestly, I thought we were going to be walking away. I thought we were going to cancel because of how much is wrong. It's not my house. If it was me, I probably would have walked away. I didn't tell them that. This is exactly what I would say to the agent in an email. If it was me, I probably would have walked away. There are several things that were called out for further inspection. I recommended that they do the further inspection, but they don't want to. So to me, this is like your seller is getting a really good deal with this, because any other buyer is going to ask is going to need to do further inspections, and who knows what's going to come up. So my client is taking on a lot of risk by asking for this, and then just leave it at that. Listen, buyer makes their decision, seller makes their decision. I do my best to educate everyone on here's the situation. Personally, I think your house is a piece of shit. My client loves it. I don't understand, but I'm not going to talk them out of it. You tell me what your seller wants to do. And a lot of times they'll say, okay, deal. They might say, and you have to prepare your client. Hey, they might just flat out say no. If you're okay with walking away, just be prepared that they may come back and say yes, right? Chase and I had it where it was like the freaking sink was shooting water this way. The pipes were corrugated and almost closed shut, like the drain pipes were like this or something. And so the water pressure was super low. There was flooding in the crawl space, and I think there was like termites or something. We asked for that and a ton of other stuff. And so we just asked for that stuff to be fixed or credited. We gave them the option. They said no to everything. They said, we're not doing anything. So our client said, okay, we're canceling. Honestly, I was shocked. I think Chase was shocked that they said no to everything. Sure, we could have said, hey, just be prepared that if we walk away, if we have to walk away for whatever reason, sometimes a lot of times people change their mind. and they'll give you the world. It works out because he bought a house with a shop, which is what he really wanted in the long run. So, but what ended up happening was we said, fine, here's the cancellation. And they said, okay, we'll fix everything and give you a $5,000 credit, right? I think it was something crazy like that. And it goes to show that sometimes the agent is talking for their client, and you need to pick up on that early on, right?
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, there's things that happen, real quick, Chase. There's things that happen that, for instance, that $1 million house, it was semi-recent. The agent kept saying, oh, we're not going to accept that. We're not going to accept anything less. I'm like, you're saying, in my head, I'm like, you're saying we, but it's not your decision. It is your client's decision. When you hear that, you submit your offer and you ignore their phone calls. You wait for them. Because what I did is she was hammering me. I'm like, I'm in a ton of meetings. I'm so sorry. Just let me know what your client thinks. And they came and accepted it. I guarantee you, if I would have answered the call, she would have like tried to do some like negotiating right there. And instead of just presenting it, and her client said, you know what? Let's do it. Chase.
Yeah, it was so it was like, oh my God, was it
It's okay. It doesn't matter to remember.
well, okay, yeah, but basically like you said, we canceled and they came back and they were like, we'll give you $12,000 when we asked for like, what was it, like 8 or something?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was insane. It was, yeah, but by that point my client was already out of it. Like
Yeah.
he was just like done with the property. He didn't even want it anymore.
Yeah, Nate.
Yeah, so what I want to say is it's important to try to understand the seller situation
Yeah.
from the get-go. Pay attention, keep your ears open from the first discussion you have.
That
with
was going
the
to be my
listing
next
agent,
point. Yeah.
because I'm telling you, they will give away a lot of information that you can use, not so much as leverage, but just
Yes,
understand
as leverage. Yeah.
Just to understand the situation. Do they need to sell? Do they have a remaining balance on their loan? Is it a family member selling the home because probate or whatever? But do they have backup offers? Like all these things change the dynamic of the transaction. So not that you want to take advantage of somebody, but if your client ultimately needs something done for them to move forward with this transaction, you may have that leverage and understand the situation a little bit better to ask for those things.
Yeah. So I do use the word leverage because if you talk to anyone who teach it, like real negotiators who teach about negotiating, it always has to do with leverage, right? It's, hey, the house is vacant. There's no way they want to make another payment on this house, whatever it might be. That $1 million house, the landscaper stopped by while we were doing inspections and he said, you guys are buying this house? And we're like, yeah, do you do the landscaping for the owner? He's like, yeah, this guy's rich. He owns all these dealerships that provide tires for all the police department SWAT vehicles, and he's got a multi-million-dollar mansion in Tahoe, one on the coast, and we're just like, okay, that gives us leverage. Same thing in the opposite direction can happen, right? I've had my clients go to an open house and I told them not to. I told them, do not say anything to the listing agent. What did they say? They know we're good friends now. And they're like, yeah, I kicked myself. They told the listing agent, oh, this house would be perfect because the guy's like, my ex lives right down the street and doing childcare with her would be so much easier if we bought this house. And this was the only house on the market, like literally with a mother-in-law suite. Because then they brought up, oh, it'd be perfect because my mother-in-law can live there. Ruined everything. She's like, it came out that in Yuba County, I think it's Yuba County, there are loan limits that are different than everywhere else because it's a low-income county. So they were being required to put an extra $20,000 down and they didn't want to. So they said, okay, well, we'll just reduce the price. And she's like, no, we're not reducing the price. This is the only house in the market for them that has a mother-in-law suite. And it's right down the street from their in-laws. It's the only house. I know that they want this house. And I'm like, no. I get that they said that to you, but I'm telling you, like, they're fine going to Woodland. She's like, no, they're not. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, no, they told me that this is the only house for them. And I was like, well, F you, okay. And I told them, they're like, yeah, no, we'll just go buy a house in Woodland. And she called me forever. She's like, hey, are they ready? I'm like, no, we're looking at houses in Woodland. She would not let it go. So be very careful when it's your client. Like, even if it's a first client and you're going in, it's okay to show houses during an open house. Like, I prefer to do that. But I tell my client, hey, when we go in, like, just be careful not to say anything. When we walk up to front doors, don't say anything. I've had my own seller catch a client saying, or a buyer saying something like, hey, we'd be okay with this, but we're going to offer this. And they caught it on the Ring doorbell camera. Like, just shut up, shut your mouth. Yeah. I've had, for those of you who knew Dylan Hikins, I had to tell him and his wife, they did that outside the front door. Like, stop, shut. They're talking about it. I'm like, there's a camera right there. And you never know what people are going to listen to. So that's how the negotiations really work, is that kind of stuff. Now, with the request for repairs, just to briefly show you all this, because we do get a lot of people asking, how would you type it out? It's very important. So it's pretty straightforward, right? Yes, you want to check the box, attached reports. Even if you already sent it to them, I would make sure you check the box attached reports. Why? You never know when you get that agent who did not send it to their seller. And people have weird reasons why they want to do that, even though it's not legal. But I want to make sure, I want the seller to see this and say, hey, it says that there was a report attached. Where is it? I want them to ask their agent. But you can check this box, buyer requests that seller prior to final verification of condition. Repair or take the sorry, my eyes are not working good. Other specified action. We should do pop-up reading because I'm too dyslexic. My eyes do this. I see to take other and it goes right back up at the start. Other specified action for each item listed below or on the attached listed. So if you go above and beyond this, it'll immediately attach another document. So don't worry about that. But I like to type out one. Purchase price to be, or there's a box right down here as well. Buyer requests seller to credit, and then there's a box for purchase price, wherever that is. But yeah, yes, you can wait for the FHA appraisal. I would rather get them to agree to stuff now. If you're waiting for FHA or VA appraisals, and you would just resend another one labeled number 2, and you would put the items that needed to be fixed per the appraisal. It's important that if you're not asking for anything, like Nate and I had one where it was supposed to be a USDA. And so we would have checked this box and put the items, that way they are aware and we're disclosing that this is per the lender's requirements. If you have a listing and they're saying, oh, the appraiser's asking for this, just remind them, okay, well, you put it up here, not here. And are you disclosing that you are disclosing that the lender actually asked for that? So otherwise you're defrauding the seller. So this is what I like to do. Like, let's say it's, I want to do this. This happens a lot. The water heater's leaking. So I'll just say seller to have water pipe on top of the water heater. Usually at that point, you'd say replaced by a licensed plumber. There's some things you don't want to be too lackadaisical about it, because people can replace things exactly how they want to replace things, right? If it's like, hey, fix this wall and match the paint, right? And if you didn't ask for the matching paint, you're not going to get matching paint. If you ask for, hopefully this kind of makes sense. And then I just go number 2, right? And I spell it out in detail. I ask for the license if they want. I don't just say in a professional manner, unless if I'm okay with, hey, as long as it just gets fixed, because they don't want to have to fix it. So there's that. You obviously have section 1 and section 2 pest work, or you can just ask for a credit, right? Now, here's the thing. If I just want a credit, my client just wants $5,000 credit. Really, you need to just put together an addendum in an email and say, hey, we are asking for a $5,000 credit to cover the items being fixed. Our leverage, remember, is, or we're canceling. you will get agents who will say, well, I want you to send it in a request for repairs, and then we'll do an addendum, because you don't want to send the request for repairs with a credit to the lender, because every lender is going to say, hey, legally, because they sell the loan on the secondary market and they have to disclose all those documents. Whoever they're selling the loan to is going to say, wait, what repairs? Right. And so they're going to require that you fix that stuff. So I never send the lender any request for repairs. I would rather send them an addendum. Now, here's where it gets weird. You will have listing agents that will tell you, put the credit on the request for repairs. Then once we agree, then we'll put together an addendum. The problem with that is it looks like the seller is giving 2 credits. One toward, because on your addendum, you're going to put the seller to give buyer $5,000 towards all recurring and non-recurring closing costs. The request for repairs are going to say $5,000 towards repairs, right? And so if your buyer is savvy and you don't know them or whatever it might be, they're an attorney, they're going to say, oh, no. I'm owed $10,000. Look, here are the 2 agreements, seller, you signed, and now you're going to have a huge issue. So these agents are doing this, and I'm seeing it all the time. Now, if you're representing the buyer, don't worry about it, because it does not affect your buyer. You want to get the credit, right? You don't need to have a I got you moment where you say, hey, listen, look at it. Your seller's agreeing to pay 2 credits of $5,000. Look at it. You just want the credit, right? If that makes sense. So if they say, hey, I want it in a request for repairs before we sign the addendum, then just do it that way. Okay. If you are the listing agent, never, ever do it that way. Otherwise, someone is going to get caught, and it's going to come down the pipeline. Like someone's going to figure this out, and they're going to screw someone over. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyone who's been around a little bit have any feedback on any requests for repairs, damages, stuff like that? Negotiating. I think the biggest part to remember is you play nice up until this point, because that will give you a lot of leverage, right? Then you can be as annoying as you want about getting documents signed. And
I want to bring up something that's been helpful that Cameron taught me, and he's brought up on meetings before. He didn't bring up today, but it's very helpful to say, your clients are excited about this home. You just, you're inflating the ego of the listing agent. And then all of a sudden you do inspections like, oh man, they were excited and they got these reports. Now they're kind of a little nervous, and, and then give them the reports, let them sit on it. Like Cameron said earlier, it definitely helps.
Yeah, a lot of times when I finish the inspections, I will tell the agent right away, hey, we finished the inspections. I'll send you the reports as soon as I get them. There is a lot going on. My clients seem a little anxious and nervous now, but I'm good at talking to them and educating them, but we'll have a talk once we get the reports back. That way you're like, I'm setting up multiple moments of saying, like, to Nate, what Nate was saying is that, hey, and this is why you should do inspections ahead of time, because it's that exact reason. Most lenders don't really fully disclose the closing costs and the payment until you get into contract. And they don't have to do that until day 3 of locking the interest rate. So let's say, day 3, they're getting disclosed all these fees that they weren't aware of, and a monthly payment higher than they were expecting because no one talked to them about monthly payment. And then they're going and doing inspections 2 days later where an inspector's just ripping the house apart. I mean, they're not talking about the good things with the house. They're talking about the bad things. It becomes a freak out moment for some people, right? And so you want to be careful of that. But also, when I'm talking to sellers, when we're taking the listing appointment, I want to point that out as well. Yeah. Any other feedback or anything anyone else wants to share? All right. Well, that's pretty much it. I will talk to you all later.